Now, as you guys know, on this channel we have a bit of a historic tradition where we try to qualify for F1 Esports. Most recently, I took part in the F1 Esports Challenger Series, of course, which was, I believe, a 10-race season. I took part from midway until the end, as I joined midway as a reserve driver and did the final 6 rounds. Now, I've also in the past done the F1 Esports qualifying events on the F1 game, and over the last week or so on the game we have had an event to qualify around Austria. So I've left it a bit late. The event actually finished last night, which is when I recorded this, so this is going to be my attempt of trying to qualify. Now in this video you're going to see 2 attempts. One's going to be slightly shorter and more condensed and chopped up, and then a second one. Essentially I'm going to show you my best effort and then my even better one, which I unfortunately picked up a track limits warning, which really knocks down your score, and then also an ideal kind of run of what you should be doing. So I'm going to break it down and just show you really the level that it takes of perfection to make it in F1 Esports. So if you guys are excited for the content, I really enjoy these kind of videos, then leave a like, subscribe for more, and let's jump into it. Now here we are then, we are in the main menu and in the F1 Esports Series event. So as you can see on screen, there was 1 day left. I recorded it literally last night. We're currently nowhere, we don't have a score. Danny Moreno is P1, Di Capua, Longe, Rasmussen, Idowu, Caraton. So many big F1 Esports names are already signed up and in the top 10. In terms of the event, to maximize your score, you have to run no assists, the hardest difficulty possible, and of course turn off flashbacks and all that. Basically make it as hard as possible for yourself, because the harder it is, the higher score you're going to get. Now the event in itself, the target is to finish in 3rd place or higher. In other words, get on the podium, and if you can do more than that, you'll get extra score. So there's a few things to note with F1 Esports events, and you do gain extra points for how fast your fastest lap is. So the faster you go on one particular lap, your purple lap, then the higher the score you're going to get. So it's important to, kind of aim for one really strong push lap. And also, if you can actually beat the target, which in this case is finishing P3, and finish P2 or even P1, you're going to be benefiting massively. Now this was my first attempt. As you saw, we got a warning for track limits, and then I went off the track, so nothing really good came from that. We then move on to my first attempt that I managed to finish, and you can see here, lap 67, I passed Perez on the inside of turn 3. We then caught up to Esteban Ocon through the final corner and lost a bit of time through here, really not maximizing the overtakes. And we do set our fastest lap of 1 minute 5.0, and then eventually down the inside of turn 1 we passed Ocon, but it wasn't ideal. A lot of time lost in that entire sequence. Now with this event, if you will see here, once we get past Albon and Ricciardo, I'll explain the key thing here. So for example here, we caught these 2 up at the same time, so I went for a double lunge up the inside. We had contact with Ricciardo. That's a bit of a grey area. It could be a lucky day, it could not be a lucky day. So essentially, if you have contact with a car, if you get a warning for causing a collision or contact with another person, you will get, of course, a score taken away. So you need to make sure you make clean overtakes as well, and of course don't cut corners and keep it within track limits. Now this attempt we passed Leclerc at the final corner and finished P3, therefore completing the challenge, and the score we got was 159,000, which wasn't that great. The top 10, the top guys are at 170 plus, so yeah, we've got a long way to go. No issues, we got no flashbacks used, we kept it clean, no corner cuts, no extensions, nothing. But it wasn't enough, it just wasn't fast enough. So for this event I found out that every single lap of the race has to be minimum below 1 minute 5, so like a 1 minute 4 something. Every single lap has to be a 104, maybe even a 103 on some laps. Now this attempt right here was actually the one that registered on the leaderboard for me. So as you can see, lap 67, it's been 1 lap of this event so far. You want to pass Perez up the inside of turn 3, and then you want to go about passing Esteban Ocon. I caught him up this time through this kind of mid part of the lap, and again, not ideal, losing time through here, not really maximizing the pace of the car. I decided to drain the ERS to get this one done up the inside here. And if you notice, compared to the previous version that I showed you, we passed him a bit earlier this time, so not losing time through the final corner or turn 1. We set a fast lap of 1 minute 4.8 on lap 69 when we catch up to Albon and Ricciardo. So again, similar scenario to the one before. We're going to go about passing both of them. and we're going to try and go for the exact same overtake as the last time. So as you can see up the inside here, making sure we don't have any contact this time, so keeping it very clean. And there we go, we've got clean air. So we've now got a chase after Leclerc. He's 4.8 up the road on the hard tyres. You're on much fresher softs, of course, in this event. We set another fastest lap at 1 minute 4.8, so keeping that pace strong below the 1 minute 5s. The next lap we set yet another personal best, and it was 1 minute 4.7 as we head on to the last lap of the race now. So if you remember before, we passed Leclerc at the final corner on the last lap. This time we're going to pass him out of turn 1, and on the run up towards turn 2 and turn 3 we're going to get him. So a lot earlier this time, and it's going to of course help us because we can now go into clean air and push for the rest of the lap. We get a purple sector 1, and for reference you can see the Mercs. We're going to finish this event about 3.7 off Lewis Hamilton, who is ahead of us. So that's the end, and this is actually my best score. So you'll see here we finish 4.3 behind Bottas at the end of the race as a reference, P3 for us, and like I said, about 3.7 off Hamilton. So that's where this event finished. If we look at the total score, I scored 164,789 points, and again, a long way away. You know, the top guys are in the 170s, and at this point I realized, wow, we got a long way to go. So what I did was I actually went on YouTube, had a bit of a browse, and a shout out to Josh Idowu, who was the person who I believe was in P5 or P6 in the top 10. He did a video for his channel, which I'll leave linked down below. A decent attempt, a really strong attempt, and he kind of highlighted to me where I should be pushing and where I should be making these moves. So once I kind of downloaded the information, admittedly I'm not as fast as Josh, I don't probably have a setup as good as him, I knew what I had to aim for. So as you can see, he's P5 in the leaderboard with 171,000 points, and we're currently 63rd in the world. I believe I was 63 out of 4,200 and something, which essentially put me in the top 1%. Now if we look at the top 10, Moreno, Di Capua, Longate, Rasmussen, Idowu, Caraton, Cedric Tomei, and even Ulas Ozildarim and Chanakinchi, I've raced with all of these guys, and they're all so fast. So I know it's going to be tough, very tough. I believe Philip Presnader, my teammate in PSG, was P11. So yeah, we look at the kind of cumulative score, and you can see lap time wise we're kind of in that bracket, so 85.33. now I can tell you the top guys were doing 85.29, which is essentially 4 seconds, which would put them with the two Mercedes, and in other words winning the race. So that's what you need to be doing in these events. Now we're going to move on to a full uninterrupted no cuts attempt. Now this one was a lot faster than my qualified attempt, but in this one I actually picked up a warning for track limits, which essentially ruined my score. So let's talk about it. Important on this first lap to not use too much ERS, because you need to be saving it for the overtaking. You need to make full use of this first lap and really close the gap to Perez. At this point I was 1.4 on this back straight, which is the closest I ever got. I actually did this pretty early on, about within the first hour. I then tried for another hour and a half, and I just could not beat this attempt. So yeah, as you'll see through here, this is the section where you really make up the time. These long lefts on the soft tyres, 6th gear through this one, just really giving everything and just extracting everything out of the soft tyre. The goal is to be around 6/10 around this point, which means you'll gain the remaining time through these final 2 corners, and therefore you set up the overtake on the pit straight. Now what you got to do here, shout out to Josh for this tip, you have to force Perez to go defensive into turn 1, because then you can just go completely around the outside and cruise past. So that's one move done, and we're now within DRS of Esteban Ocon. Now for this one you want to set him up for the next heavy brake zone. So through here you're going to close the gap as much as possible, make sure you get nice clean traction through here, and essentially you have to dive bomb. Simple as that. Now what I do here, I actually stay a little bit further back so Ocon doesn't go defensive, and therefore that leaves the inside wide open for me to just dive down the inside. We make the move, and up next is Albon. He's 1.5 ahead of us, so the target now is to get within DRS range before the DRS zone on the pit straight. This lap as well is the lap where you're going to dump all of your ERS, because this will end up being your fastest lap of the entire event. So you can see currently 2 purple sectors, we throw the car into 9 and 10, and we're now within DRS of Albon, and half a second behind, and we're going to set a 1 minute 3.8, which is a really, really strong time, and the best one that I'll do throughout this event. We get a nice run through turn 1, and we're nicely tucked in the slipstream. Same thing as before, we're not going to get super close to Albon here because I don't want him to go defensive, therefore it will leave the inside open into the corner, which I can just take. And then as a consequence, same thing as with Esteban Ocon, we're going to try and dump the ERS and DRS and everything to get past Ricciardo. Now ideally you want to be passing Ricciardo right here into turn 4. I wasn't able to make that happen. I only made that happen once, which I'll show you after. So in this instance, what I tried instead was, and what I found worked quite well, was going completely around the outside of turn number 5 or turn 6. You get a really nice run through there. It doesn't really cost you too much time, and you can get a nice clean run. So essentially, lap 68, we're now in clean air. So we're going to get a couple of laps in free air to push as hard as possible to close down and chase Charles Leclerc. So this is where I always say the exact same thing, you know, in every single one of these F1 Esports videos. Now, it's one thing to pass, and it's, you know, one thing to get these overtakes done efficiently and cleanly whilst keeping it within track limits. All of these things that are so difficult to do, because then when you hit clean air, this is when the second phase of the challenge comes in. So you need to try and just hit personal best after personal best, you know, really try and push every lap, every corner like it's a qualifying lap. And that's where the challenge in these events come in, because it's only 6 laps, but it's really, really intense. So as you can see, we've cleared the traffic behind now, and 1 lap later we're about 2.5 seconds ahead of Ricciardo. So that's how much we're pushing, and the gap to Leclerc has come down by pretty much 3 seconds on this lap. So, you know, we are absolutely giving it everything here. We don't have any ERS to really work with. You want to try and save a little bit for when you eventually line up Leclerc for the pass. But you can see now, with 2 laps to go, compared to my previous attempts, we're actually going to be, you know, within DRS and within overtaking range of Charles Leclerc. So this is a much better attempt. You can see here 7/10 behind and just consistently cutting the gap. And what you're going to do now is set up the overtake into turn 3 and line him up into 4. That's the best way to go about this. And as you see here, we get a decent bit of traction. ERS and DRS wide open. Now towards turn 4. Again, don't make Leclerc go defensive. That way it leaves the inside wide open. So just stay in line and follow him. Don't get too close. And then you can lunge it on the brakes and we make the move. So with a lap and a half to go, we've cleared Leclerc, which is the earliest I managed to clear him. And we've now got to chase the Mercedes cars. So you can see we've got Hamilton 3.4, now 3.2 up the road. So we're gaining time all the time now through every single corner. I don't have any ERS to work with. We've still got plenty of fuel, but you have to watch out for engine temps. If you overheat the engine, you'll end up losing performance on the straights. So yeah, last lap of the race, gap within 3 seconds now to Hamilton. We're going to just push as much as we can. You do hope the Mercedes cars battle, but unfortunately they don't. The way they're coded for this event, they're not going to battle, so they're not going to knock any time off of their own kind of race. So yeah, this last lap at this point, you are starting to lose the tyres a little bit, and you're just trying to eke out every last bit of performance out of the car. And I honestly thought this was going to be the one. I was really happy with this attempt, and this would have given me, I'm going to estimate a score around 167, maybe 168. I reckon 168,000 could have been possible with this score, because my fastest lap was a 1 minute 3.8, which is comfortably below 1 minute 4. And this was the closest I managed to get to the Mercedes. But you can see through here, I make one mistake. I just run a bit too deep into the left-hander. I tried to push and it backfired on me. I ran way too far into the corner, missed the apex. I tried to pick up the throttle and rotate the car by accelerating, but it just didn't happen. I ended up understeering off the road, off the track, and getting a warning. We crossed the line though, 1.9 behind the Mercedes, or 1.5, I'm not quite sure. And at the end of the attempt, you can see here 2.1 off Valtteri Bottas and 1.5 behind Hamilton. So that was the closest I managed to get, and it was a pretty strong attempt. This would have, like I said, got me 168k had I not picked up that track extension warning. Now, because of that warning that I got, it put down my score to 164,000.0, so essentially matching pretty much my already best score, which is a real shame. Now, comparing this score to the previous attempt, if you look at the clean lap bonus, I actually lost 3,250 points, which I got 164,000.7 on the previous one, so essentially it would have brought me to about 168k, pretty much on the nose. But nonetheless, this was one more attempt that I tried. Once I finished that previous attempt, I tried for an hour and a half to try and beat it. I just couldn't do it. But this one was really, really good. So we've done the same thing as before. We passed Perez, lap 67, around the outside of turn 1. So that stayed consistent. And we're now going to line up Ocon for the pass up into turn 4. So we get close through here, make sure we're right on the gearbox, exiting the corner, and then we try to line him up for the overtake into the next brake zone. Again, not forcing him to go defensive, so we keep a bit of a distance, you know, using leading revs if necessary, and we then just dive bomb out the inside. Little details that I threw here this time, I managed to get a nice bit of rotation on the front nose, but yeah, we got the move done. And then next lap, same thing again. We actually set a 1 minute 3.8, but a really, really low 8.8, which was even better than before. You can see from here, same thing as before. We're going to pass Albon here up into turn 3. So keeping the distance to make sure he doesn't go defensive. But unlike the previous attempt, I pull off the move so cleanly, I managed to still hit the corner apex and get the drive. And this is what you want to be doing. Getting the DRS and the ERS, and that you're close enough to pass Ricciardo into turn 4. So as you can see here, massive dive bomb, bit of contact. Again, we got lucky to not get a warning, but unfortunately, when I was flying high, the next lap, you can see here, I missed my apex and then lose the back end out of turn 1, and unfortunately, that is going to be it for the event. So I tried, this would have been the one with the most potential. I feel like I could have got within a second of the Mercedes cars on the last lap and pretty much finished right behind them. But nonetheless, as you can see, 63rd in the world, 164.7, pretty much 0.8. And like I said, I missed out on 3,250 because of, you know, that one warning for track limit. So more or less, I should have been around the 168,000 mark, which I'm not sure where it would have put me. I'm going to guess top 25 maybe, but still good fun. I always enjoy these events because you get to see how much the small margins really make. And like I said, I'll go watch Josh's attempt in the description down below. It was a really good attempt and it gives you an idea of what the level is. But guys, if you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And a shout out as always to the channel members for supporting the content. And finally, if you haven't done so already, check out the 2 videos on your screen, guys, if you have missed them. But that is it from me here today. And I guess esports will have to wait another year.